Hey y'all, it's Renegade, and now that the jury is started, it's time to discuss the seventh week of Big Brother 26 and have our mid-season wrap-up discussion about my thoughts on the chances of each of the final nine house guests. Now, on this week's podcast, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently, as it's just me, myself, and I here this week, and I will be breaking down my overall thoughts on the final nine house guests in order that we see them winning the season. But before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and do a quick recap on last week, since we kind of discussed most of our thoughts on the fact that Quinn had become the new head of household in our last podcast. Deciding he couldn't nominate anyone who voted for Tucker to go home last week, Quinn decided to nominate his target Angela against two members of the known Friends' trio, Kimo and Rubina. Quinn's target was Angela, and his crush ended up winning the power of veto, Leah, and Leah chose to put Quinn in a very tricky situation after deciding to use the veto to save Angela, who would be a potential jury vote for her. To which Quinn decided to nominate another ally, Joseph, onto the block. When Rubina won the final AI arena of the season, it came down to a game time decision between Joseph and Kimo, with Chelsie and Makensy making a last minute switch to send Joseph out the door in a 4-3 vote. This season has so many people leaving on a supposed allies HOH, and Joseph becomes the final victim of that. And I kind of want to start out our conversation with Joseph, our final pre-juror, because usually someone getting sniped out so quickly out of the competition like Joseph would typically be because they were such a huge threat, but Joseph leaving felt like he was just playing so badly, and most of them just didn't want to see him make the jury. With a number of women still left in the house, Joseph's strategy of just kind of randomly telling everyone how amazing he is at all times while reminding them why he will win against them. I mean, I can't imagine why. This wasn't really a winning strategy, unfortunately, but fortunately, didn't work out for him. And out of everyone in this season, he is the one draft pick I'm looking kind of like, "Ooh, why did I kind of ever put faith in someone who really wanted to idolize Dr. Will so badly when that was literally like 2001 or 2002, girl? Like, come on now. We've had 20 years of gameplay since then. And Will even showed on his All Stars thing his strategy doesn't work. You need to win a competition, Joseph. Why? But it is kind of a funny ending to his story, unfortunately. But that takes us now to our final nine and their chances of taking the entire $750,000 grand prize. Now, remember, this is not my list of favorites, because honestly, that would be a much different list. But this will be a list of my thoughts on basically a power ranking of who is most likely to least likely to win the season. Let's go ahead and start out with the player that, unfortunately, I have ranked as the least likely to win the season, and that will be America's favorite house guest, the true mother of all married mothers, and the charcuterie queen herself, Angela. He comes into the final nine with two head of household wins for an overall two competition wins. And while if I was to go based on sheer entertainment value, Angela would win the season for me, hands down. Unfortunately, each and every one of her antics, while I absolutely love, and they have come back to bite this poor woman in the butt so bad. And I just cannot see a season where she wins based solely on her poor respect amongst the other house guests. With her being saved so many times, yet still being considered disposable, she really kind of does have Final Two Goat written all over her at this point, which is such a shame. But can I dare speak into existence that I see a world where everyone keeps dismissing her and somehow she comes on very super strong at the very end, dominates everything, and somehow wins against someone like a Quinn or maybe even a Rubina? I mean, okay, that might be the margaritas from French talking, but I could dream, right? Now, at number eight, they have Tucker's better half, Rubina, who comes into the final nine with one competition win in the AI arena last week. Now, Rubina, for me, just hasn't really done anything in the game whatsoever for me to believe that she has a strong case to win. She hasn't done anything offensive either, but, I'm just not seeing a motivation from her to really play a game. She seems like she's been much more invested in her personal relationship with Tucker, and I do wish them the best after the season. But her alliance, unfortunately, is in the minority, so even if she does get to the end, the best she could really hope for immediately is two votes. But the threat of her having those two votes will always be there, especially if Kimo, especially if Kimo and Tikor go out before her. And while I do think there are niche competitions where she'll do well in, she just hasn't proven to me that she has the competitive skills to win a challenge when she really needs to win at this point. I think what she really hopes for at best is maybe runner up, because otherwise, what did she do? Now, at number 7, I have our invisible house guest Cam, who comes into the final 9 with one competition win in the power of veto. And honestly, Cam has done a much better job at getting the house guests to dismiss him as a threat, despite him having seemingly everything he needs to be a comp beast on this season. I say seemingly everything he needs because for me, he hasn't really kind of come through in a lot of the competitions that I was expecting him to. And while I'm still not ruling out a possible endgame run from Cam here, I just don't see him really having the strategic forethought to go to the end with a player that he doesn't have a strong personal relationship with, i.e., Chelsie or a Quinn or a Tikor or even a Makensy or a Leah at this point. I just feel like all those players have better personal relationships than he does, probably better at speaking and can form a much better speech than he can probably. And it just makes me worry that Cam is going to be a loyal soldier taken out to benefit someone else's game rather than playing for himself. So I just have a hard time at this point seeing him making it there without the threat card coming up at some point. But his endgame potential really depends on who he's with at the end. Now at number 6, I'm putting my final draft pick, Kimo, who comes into the final 9 with one competition win in the very first AI arena. And if Kimo was better at comps, I would likely put his chances so much more higher because he's clearly a very likable presence in this house. But I always fear he's going to be seen as the biggest meat shield out of his power trio with Rubina and Picor, and he really stands out being a man in a woman's majority house right now, which isn't good for him right now at the moment. I do see Chemo's biggest obstacle is getting through this week, because the longer Chemo lasts with his alliance intact, the better the chances that one of the three of them could sneak into the end. So which I still wish he was a little bit more proactive and better at competitions. If Kimo could just hang on a week or two longer with the right people in power, I could see things really shifting dramatically back into his favor to the point where he might be able to make an endgame run. And who knows? He's just likable enough to get the votes to win. Now, at number 5, right in the middle is Quinn, who comes into the final 9 with one head of household win and one deep fake head of household win, so a total of 2 competition wins. And personally, I want to put Quinn so much lower, but even as bad as some of his moves have been this season, things have ultimately worked out for him for the most part. He's a solid competitor, which is always a benefit in the end game, as more likely he is to see his power in his favor. However, Quinn has really blundered every opportunity at a power move this entire game, so I do wonder if him taking power and control is really the best thing that could possibly happen here for his game. Maybe he should let other people do that. But at the end of the day, he is seen taking power, making decisions, and having control, which is a lot more than other players can say. If he's able to get by on competitions, it's possible his perspective in the house changes and he gets a lot more respect. But even more so than someone like Cam that I have ranked lower, I could see Quinn being really one of the most variable people out of all of these people as far as where he could possibly end. And that's even with Angela in the house, because even though Angela is kind of a wild card, Quinn is a wild card himself, but is also considered a strategic threat. So he really could have the trigger pulled on him at any time, but he also could be a player that happens to win his way to the end as well. So there's just so many mixed feelings I have on Quinn. He could be liked, he could be hated. It really kind of is determined on how this jury stage goes down for him and who he's sitting next to more than anything else. Has he learned from his mistakes? I guess we'll find out. At number 4, I have Leah, who comes into the final 9 with one competition win in the power of veto. And prior to last week, I never would have thought I would have ranked Leah this high. And she ultimately would be so much higher had Joseph still been in the game over Chemo. But she's shown to be a very persuasive and self interested player when she wants to be. And that's the keyword, when she wants to be. Which I don't think any of us ever gathered, even after watching her for weeks on the live feeds. She's really emerged in a way I never expected her to, and much like another player on this list, the fact that this house is so fluid has only worked in Leah's benefit thus far. Leah is basically the only person, along with Chemo and Quinn, also that if they make it through this week, they have a very solid chance at a deep run, but they're also probably the three biggest targets for this week. My fear for Leah is even though she's shown that she can win competitions, I just worry how consistently she can win comps because this endgame is really all dependent on who's able to wield power and win, and she definitely has a very strong case for herself if she's able to get to the end. So I just worry she's going to be able to get there, but I would absolutely love to see a Leah Angela final two. Just gonna speak that to existence right now. Now, at number three, the most surprising out of all of my rankings here, had you asked me this like a week or two ago, is Makensy, who comes into the final nine with two AI Arena wins and the America's Veto win on the very first night, so a total of three competition wins. And if you're spoiled on this week, which I'm just going to go and say you probably are if you're watching this video, she won the power of veto. So she's now the official new comp beast of the house with four wins. And there's actually a very great argument of flipping Makensy with my current number one because this girl has turned on in ways I never expected her to. I do think the moment she won the AI arena over Tucker was an extremely huge, pivotal, game changing point in this game. And Mackenzie has always had her advantage. Fact that she has only had really herself to rely on for a number of weeks. You can't really say she's been carried because she's always managed to win her way off the block when she was in any danger. I'm not going to compare her to Taylor Hale, but she did kind of start out very much so in that position of just being on the outs of really every alliance. And I think that's only benefited her at this point because she doesn't really have any of that past distrust with other players like all the other players do with each other. My only fear with Mackenzie is that her early game is always going to be a stain on her, and perhaps she doesn't have the best personal relationships with people as a result of that. But I would not be surprised if in a few weeks from now we are seeing Mackenzie sit in the finale against one of the other six players I've already mentioned on this list and leaving the house 750k richer. And the fact she doesn't have the target on her like my top two house guests of the season does make me pause that maybe I really should be putting her as my number one, but honestly, I don't want Painless to win another draft. And two, I just feel like my top two have better strategic relationships than she does, that are more likely to wiggle their way out of a bad situation if things don't go their way in the coming weeks. Whereas I really do think Mackenzie will likely need to rely a lot more on competitions to make it far. Now, at number two, despite me absolutely hating her head of household week, no one can deny the social player that is T-Core, who comes into the final nine with one win in the head of household. And despite making one of the biggest strategic blunders of the game, for me personally, Tikor has managed to rebound from her head of household week to put in a very strange position, honestly, where people are actively trying to work with her directly, but are targeting anyone she is close to. It's a weird dynamic because it really shows how great Tikor is at getting everyone to like and trust her, yet how her biggest enemy in the game will absolutely be herself in her strategic game. While she has finally kind of woken up to how bad players like Chelsie and Quinn are for her game, T-Core also has this desire to have everyone like her, which causes her to not be the most proactive player. If she's truly woken up and truly woken up here and realizes that she could have taken the game in her hands by now, and she still can, then T-Core will without a doubt go into this endgame with one of the best chances to win this whole thing. But will she recognize how much influence she really has and utilize it to her advantage? That's really what T-Core's whole game will bank on at this point. And that's because at number one, we have a player who I think is the most strategically woke player in the game and is using her influence to her best advantage here. And that's Chelsie, who comes into the final nine with three competition wins, two head of households, one being this week, and the head of I arena that she won week five. Now, the fact that Chelsie is now one of the biggest competition threats in the game, coupled with the fact that she also has a very clear strategic narrative since the start of this game, I just feel like Chelsie has without a doubt the best chance at making a deep run in this game and winning. Even if her closest allies right now, like Mackenzie or Cam or Quinn, do wake up to the fact that she is a huge threat, Chelsea has been smart enough to keep someone like T-Core close to the point where her side is going to want to target everyone else in Chelsea's alliance before Chelsea herself, much kind of like how T-Core is the most insulated out of everyone's own alliance against Chelsea's side as well. The thing that makes me favor Chelsea's game over T-Core is the fact that Chelsea is absolutely a much more decisive, self-interested, and motivated player. While she does sometimes make decisions on emotions, like targeting Joseph because she just didn't like him, it was also a great read, which actually set her up with a great jury of players who respect Chelsea, who should be more than willing to cast a vote for her in the endgame. I definitely see Chelsie as the player to beat this season, and we'll see how true this turns out to be because Big Brother 26 has not gone the way any of us have expected whatsoever. And with the potential of another crazy backdoor this week, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm going to be excited to watch every moment of it. And hopefully you'll be too, especially if you made it this far. Thanks again for watching, and comment below if your personal power rankings on the season. And please like and subscribe because it lets us know that you're enjoying the content. Be sure to catch all of our continuing coverage on Big Brother 26, Global All Stars, and who knows what else we'll have in store with continuing series like Challenge Season 40, Drag Race Philippines, Mexico, and The Anonymous, as well as Outlast Season 2, currently airing, and the premiere of some old favorites later this month like The Circle and Survivor. So excited to see y'all there for future podcasts. And until next time, y'all, this is Renegade signing out. Remember, keep spilling that tea, y'all. Bye.